Long Island Backstory with Chief Correspondent Gary Jacobs.
Good evening, I'm Gary Jacobs, and welcome to another edition of Long Island Backstory, where we're filming at the Alt T Studios in Hauppauge, Long Island. Sadly, this is another story about corruption, which runs rampant here in Suffolk County, Long Island. This is really no surprise, though, being that our chief judge, Judge Randall Hinrichs, himself is corrupt. And when you're going from the top and your leader, your boss is corrupt, when your district attorney is corrupt, when your chief of corruption is corrupt, when your chief, your police is corrupt, you know what? Everybody else is going to be corrupt too. So corruption, runs rampant here in Suffolk County. And sadly, we have another victim as my guest here today. My guest is Hans Schmidt. Hans is an 84-year-old man from Long Island. He has paralysis since 2004 from Guillion. I knew I was going to mess this thing up, Hans. Guillion Barre Syndrome. Sorry. I guess it's good that I don't know how to say it, because that means I don't know anybody else who had it.
Nobody has it.
Which is a rare disease. Hans was married for 46 years. In 2012, he says he became aware that his ex-wife had stole over $3.5 million from him over the past 26 years. And like most crimes, there's an accomplice. And yes, according to Hans, his wife did steal this money, but at the end, he went to the court to try to get help, and the courts didn't help him, and they ended up victimizing him as well. So Hans, welcome to the program. And this is a long story. This is a long marriage. He was in court for many years. So I'm going to try to narrow everything down. But I do want to tell my viewers, if you want to see more information on it, Hans wrote a book, which, hold up the book there, Hans. So Hans wrote a book, and this will be available shortly, I guess, on your website, on Amazon, places like that. So they can Google. The name of it is Divorce or Murder. And as you can see, it's a pretty thick book, so there's going to be a lot to get down in a half hour. So Hans, let's start at the beginning of the, just to give people an idea, because people are going to watch this and say, where did Hans get $3.5 million? So where did you, how did you earn this money?
I'm a chemist, and I worked for two chemical companies, and I decided to go out on my own and make personal care products, which I manufactured. And from the very beginning, I was very successful. I'm not money-oriented, but I was making about $200,000 in the early 70s. And I would come home and play tennis with my kids at the club. And
you invested this money, too.
And I invested the money.
Some properties.
I had friends in the market, and they were all thieves. They were all on insider trading. I mean, that'd be another subject in another meeting, maybe. But the insider trading is rampant, and it's
let's stick on your story. How you made the money?
I also had investment in rental properties in Long Beach. I didn't make that much on the stock market. It was my work, my job that I created, and the products I created, and the investment in real estate. That was primarily it.
And you were married for 46 years, so your wife was with you through all this building up of the business. Did you have a good marriage?
I'd say for about, until my daughter was born. I have two children, my son Eric and my daughter, and she got ruined in college like so many girls, and she married badly. I mean, he had a lot of money, but he died of an overdose at 30 years of age, and my daughter wound up being a drug addict and alcoholic and very, very, very promiscuous. And my wife sort of went along with that and drove her to these men, and I was going out of my mind, and so it broke down. I'd say my wife told me after my daughter was born at the hospital, just leave me alone, I don't want any more children. And I'm an ardent Catholic, and I wanted about 13, 15 kids. Mm-hmm. I love kids, I love family, and it wasn't going to happen, but I tolerated a great deal. My charity work, she wouldn't let me do a lot of it. I had to do it on the sly. In fact, one of the first admonitions I got from Judge Collins, charity begins at home, knock it off. And that was for me. I mean, I had plenty of money to give away, and I wanted to.
All right. So
She wouldn't let me.
So who filed for divorce?
My wife filed for divorce because I found out the extent of her theft. I was always a little suspicious because she always said the money flow is not that good. And I thought, God, it's got to be good. I'm earning all this money. And she stole my Social Security. That was another source of income. So she had plenty of money. She was spending, she was taking about anywhere between 50 and 100,000 a year, and she had numerous accounts, about 17 investment accounts and banks.
That was separate from you?
Well, she took my money, or our marital money, and her real estate commission. She became a real estate agent and transferred everything to private accounts in her name.
Now, the people who are watching, they say, okay, you had millions of dollars. Did you ever look at a bank account?
No, I never went. The judge asked me that too. He said, why didn't you watch your money? I said, because I came from a loving family, and for me to love is to trust. To me,
But like
that's
taxes,
synonymous.
did you file taxes?
I just signed anything she put in front of me.
Right, which some people are going to say is crazy, but we know there's many women who go to court and they say, listen, I didn't know. My husband was the bread earner, and he filed the papers and said, hey, sign this paper. And I didn't even, and as you know, when you have a lot of money, the tax returns are pretty big. So you're saying that she handled all the money and just handed you the tax return and said, Hans, sign this, and you just assumed that you had millions of dollars in the bank.
Yeah, I knew I had a lot of money. In fact, I accumulated about $150,000 in gold over the years. I was with people who had gold. Women would go to a beauty salon and sell their gold bracelet or whatever, and I knew the owner, and I'd come and he'd say, I'm going to sell this for Meltdown, and some of it was absolutely beautiful stuff. And I bought it for Meltdown prices, and I gave it to my wife, and I said, this is for our retirement spending money, and it's very convenient. We have it, and why don't you wear it if you want to? There's a lot of it that's very good. She had a gold bracelet, was about 4 inches wide, but we were with wealthy people all the time, so it fit. It worked. Our area was very, very wealthy.
So when did you first realize that money was gone? So you're in court. She files for court. When did you start to realize that there was? I guess when you go to court, you do a net worth statement.
Well, she lied on both of those. So she did them twice because the lies were so bad in the net worth statement that she had to do it. She didn't have to do it again. She wasn't told to, but she did it again. I guess she was a little frightened, and that was full of lies too. But when the divorce came, I thought there's something wrong here, and I went to the bank because what happened was my son asked for 10 grand, and I said, of course.
Now your son had taken over the business because of your
took over
disease.
my business because I couldn't do it anymore, and my wife wound up denying that she gave it to him, and actually sued this marvelous son in court to get that business away from him. I could not believe she was doing
while
that.
you were still married, or
no? This was when she
during
started
the divorce. So
Yeah,
what happened with that? I'm assuming the judge.
Well, the judge, Eric had to show all his papers, and he's a great salesman, but he's not the greatest marketing guy in the world. So he has a lot of other things he does, and the business was going down quite a bit, and all of a sudden she lost interest after he had to spend about $7,000 in legal fees to defend himself for his business.
Right, which is sad. Well, mother wouldn't want their son to have the business.
Well, she put him in jail 3 times because of it too, and lied about him and said he hit her and that he was choking his sister and all this nonsense. I went to jail 8 times because I was choking her and she was in danger of her life, and I got a doctor's note saying Hans can't choke anybody, if he holds on to something. And she made the mistake of saying he was choking me with both hands. Well, if I go and hold on to, and it moves, I fall down. So it was just incredible. But anyway, I went to the bank. He wanted 10 grand, and I met the vice president, and we clicked right away. And he says, oh, I know your wife. She's been in. I said, fine. I said, I need $10,000. Do I have $10,000? And he just was on his computer and he said, you have 47,000 just laying here. You can take it now if you want to. I said, well, I only need 10, but still stupid. I said, I want to ask my wife. She may have designated that for something, and I don't know. So I went home and I told her, you know, you got 47,000 laying there, and I only need the 10. She said, well, I'll see what I can do. Those were the answers I got all the time. So I went to the bank again the next day. I had $5 left in the account. So I said, does my wife have other accounts here? And he was on his computer, and he said, Hans, you know I can't tell you that. And he's going like this and looking at his computer. Can I say that word, Chip?
Yeah, well, you just said it.
He goes, no, he goes, holy shit. You know, all the transfers where she was taking my money from the rental income, my Social Security, that she spent on her hair and clothes.
She must have looked good.
She looked fabulous all the time. No, she always, but she was a good shopper. She wasn't like, you know, just throwing money away. She went to Fox's and those kind of places. But they were, you know, she had a sable coat, $130,000.
So this is your first inkling that money's
There's something
gone.
wrong. So I had forensics done, and that's when I found these.
And what did the
tremendous
forensics show?
That she was transferring about $50,000 a year for the last 5 years, so from 7 to 12 to herself in cash, and then all her marital income from the commissions, which was supposed to be ours, which I don't care whether I got them or not, fine. She transferred to these accounts, to 17 different accounts. She also stole my $350,000 inheritance that I got from my father and my aunt. I just gave these things to her. I said, he is, you know, I sold my father's house and I'm going to give my brother the half, and here's your half, our half. And that disappeared. And my aunt had an account of $100,000, and she gave me the book and put it in both our names, and she forged my name and took the $100,000.
So did all these things come out in court?
Oh yeah, Ilyu received.
So the first judge was who?
John Collins. He didn't know about those things. His first thing, there was also a lot of damage to our house. We had a payment from the insurance company of $128,000, and
from Superstorm Sandy, right?
From Sandy, yeah. And Collins, the first judge on the case, was more interested in the $128,000. He didn't know about the millions yet, so he wasn't made aware of that. And he really was passionate about the $128,000. And he assigns his college roommate, who was twice disbarred for stealing $500,000 in escrow funds from a nursing home, and he's assigned to my money.
Now, from what I read in the book, you and your ex-wife, although you didn't agree on a lot, one of the things you agreed on is that you didn't need a receiver.
That's the
judge
only
said,
thing we agreed on.
Right, and the judge didn't care. He wanted to appoint, because this is one of the big political corruption things here in Suffolk County, is you appoint somebody, your friend, as a receiver, and it's basically a job where they make money, they steal, and you both said we don't want it. And the judge said, I'm giving it to you anyway. And then didn't you bring up at one point that there was a conflict about being his college roommate?
Oh yeah, at first he assigned her attorney.
And this is Judge Ilya, or this is Judge Collins?
This is Judge Collins. Early on, he denied me the opportunity to do a discovery when I had all these account numbers and the names of the accounts. And all we had to do was go in there and find out. In fact, I offered arbitration. I said, just give her half of my millions, and you know, she can keep her commissions from her. And she was a big producer. She was earning $150,000 a year.
So what was his reason for not doing discovery?
They never give you a reason. They never answer you about anything. He just said the discovery request is premature. But her discovery request to see if I had any private accounts, They did that 3 times at Chase Bank.
And you had an attorney
And
at
I
this
had
point?
no money there.
Right. And you had an attorney at this point doing this for you?
No, I did all of that
This is all
myself
pro se,
because
okay.
I had no money. You go to an attorney and say, look, I have no money, but I have millions, and I'll pay you after the divorce is final. I can easily pay you. They say, no, get the money. So my advisor was my friend, who was a retired judge, Michael Mullen, very nice guy, and he starts advising me, and he said, oh, you don't need a lawyer. Just tell Collins what happened. And then he was the one that volunteered and said, oh, by the way, Tim Daly is Judge Collins' roommate from Boston College. And I later found, and then Mullins wound up not talking to me anymore because I found out he was related to Casey, the attorney, through a friend of Mullins who was a friend of John Collins. So there's a whole network of this group that came from the Bronx early on as young college kids, and they set up in Huntington, and the names, if you see the names of the judges involved, there are so many of the same ethnic background that they're all playing this game together. So Collins didn't allow me discovery, which is unheard of, and I gave him all the information. And then Iliu took over, and when John Iliu, the reason for that, Collins was transferred out to Riverhead, and I got John Iliu, and I thought, oh my God, he's going to save me now, because he said.
Well, didn't you bring up that? I just want to go back a little bit. Didn't you, when you complained about the conflict of interest with Daly, saying it was a roommate, and on top of it, he was stealing money, which is common in this thing. He stole $150,000, I think you said.
He stole 100. Well, he stole 117 because my wife beat him to the punch. Of the insurance money, my wife had already stolen $11,000.
Right. So you brought it up to the judge, though.
Not to Collins. I never got that far. Collins was only interested in the $128,000 of insurance money, which now was 117, and he dealt with that for 15 months. In fact, when John Iliu got the case, he was waiving my complaint against the receiver. He got kickbacks from all the contractors. The contractor he hired to repair the roof was at $78,000, and my estimate was $9,600, and they gave it to his $78,000 guy.
This is Daly.
Daly did that,
right.
Yeah.
Now, isn't Daly? Didn't he get in trouble again?
Yeah, he's in jail now. Finally.
Right.
Finally,
But there's negligence there because you brought it up. He had already been in trouble twice.
I brought it up to every judge, everyone, and Iliu was so outraged at first, he stood up at his bench and waived my complaint at Daly and said, you will answer these charges within 30 days. And Daly had the chutzpah to say, I want Mr. Schmidt to pay for my defense. And the judge said, no. 30 days, we come back into court, and the judge, Iliu, says, I find Tim Daly is doing a professional job.
So somebody probably got to him.
Well,
I
mean, the tone and the attitude was 100%, 180% the opposite. And then he would hear nothing of mine, although he did sign 17 subpoenas that my wife had to divulge all this money in these accounts, and then he never enforced it. And I kept telling him, I said, you know, when are you going to enforce those subpoenas? He says, you're always harping on the same thing. I said, well, if somebody took $3.5 million from you, I think you'd speak up. So that was considered rude and confrontational to the judge. No, they tried to land me with all of that. But then I filed, because these institutions did not respond, I filed a non-compliance complaint against them. And I found out that Casey had called them up and told them,
Casey is your ex-wife's attorney.
Yeah. Don't bother complying. We've got that under control.
Right.
So, I mean, you would ask yourself, why would a bank not comply, when it says on the subpoena, you are liable for $3.5 million and a $150 fine if you do not comply within 30 days. So just comply. You're not going to lose anything. By not complying, you're liable to these outrageous fines. And then Iliu never mentioned it again, along with all my other complaints of the stealing that went on. And then he filed the divorce in my absence. I come there and I find I'm divorced, and that's fine with me. And I had no input whatsoever. And then they gave Daley another $100,000 in fees for his work. For doing what? But that was what they were allowed to do. So then I got I kept suing, for non-compliance, for this, that, and the other thing. So I got this, I had 7 different judges, and one was more corrupt than the other. So I got this Judge Farnetti, who also signed the subpoenas. I got them back again, and then he quashed them. No reason given. I said, why wouldn't you want that information? And he decided that my son, where my wife stole $200,000 from him, that exceeded the statute of limitations, and therefore he's not getting that money either. So I said, what do you mean? He just requested it again last month, and the law says that when you make the request, it's from that date. They just don't answer you.
So
then.
you ended up getting your divorce finalized, and did you ever get the discovery?
No.
So that you never found out or proved where the money went?
I found $650,000 because Fidelity Fund responded. And she admitted, which was a lie, that she earned $30,000 a year at Douglas Elliman as a real estate broker. And then at first she had said 60,000, and in the second net worth statement she said 30. So there's, in 30 years, there's 900,000 right there.
Right. So you found this 600. We have to speed up because we only have 5 minutes left to go. So you had this. Did you ever get this money?
No.
What happened to the 600,000 that Fidelity said?
No, I told Iliu I found 650,000, and all he ever did was he rapped his gavel and said, "I'll see you next month." No question about that or anything.
So who was the one who allowed her to steal? Was it Iliu? Would you
Everybody.
say he's responsible?
No, it went down the chain. It was Collins and Iliu were the culprits. In fact, the last guy I got was Judge Riley, and he defined Karen Casey as the instigator. I said, "Well, you got that right."
But did he do anything about it though?
No.
So he's the one who finalized your divorce though?
No. I sued for obstruction of justice and grand larceny against the judges and the lawyers. And he said, I didn't write private and confidential on the envelope, so the service was invalid. And I pointed out to him, I've never written private and confidential, and Judge Farnetti deemed my services to be proper. And then he said, oh, this should have been heard in the divorce case. I said, I can't file an obstruction of justice and grand larceny case until they commit the crime. Mm-hmm. And if it were to be heard in the divorce case, the crime hadn't been committed yet.
So where are you today now? Just to get to the, because if anybody wants more information, they can read your book, Divorce and Murder.
They can read my book, Divorce
Where are you
Murder.
today, though? You divorced?
I'm divorced.
And do you have any money?
No.
So your wife has the $4.5 to $3.5 million.
Yes. What I wound up with was $285,000. My house was appraised years ago when the market was good at over $2 million. And my property in Long Beach, one of them was $620,000, and I wound up with $285,000.
And on the book, what did your wife get?
They never showed me anything. I never saw any numbers. They gave a lot of money to Daley. He got $100,000.
Who's in jail right now?
Yes, he's in jail. He stole another $20,000 from somebody to pay his rent.
But there was no restitution made to you.
No, no. And I borrowed money My garage from Sandy was collapsing, and I spent $68,000 on that, and Casey promised me that money if I endorsed the insurance checks, which never happened.
No.
I never got anything.
And your son never got the money that was stolen from him?
No, he never got his. So from the $285,000, I gave him his $200,000 back. So I have nothing.
So what is your plan now for the future?
Oh, you want to hear my plans for the future?
We got 2 minutes.
Okay, I'm going to, if I'm connected to Jesus and Mary, I'm a Catholic, and I'm going to build a Bavarian chalet for men first to reconnect with Jesus and Mary, either for a day or for the rest of their life, and then I'll do it for women, and then I'll do it for couples. And it's not going to be cheap, it's going to be an expensive place, but all the money, every year we will have no money. It'll all go to the poor in one way or another, but I'll keep on building these. It's a movement that's going on in Germany where people are coming to live together for that religious purpose. And if you want to not follow the religion, that's not going to be the thing, as long as you're trying, that's all. It's not a religious group, it's a private place where there will be mass every day, benedictions, rosaries.
I'm thinking if there's mass and benediction and rosaries, it's religious. But maybe that's just
yeah,
me.
but it's not going to be it's not going to be enforced or anything like that.
Right.
You're free to come and go and do what you want. You can go off on vacation. You can invite a friend, even a girlfriend.
And what about the corruption? Are you doing anything about the corruption, or have you just moved the book and moved on?
I'm hoping that my book will attract somebody, like a retired lawyer who knows, because everybody in the courts knows this. I mean, all the officers of the court tell you this is the most corrupt place in the world. In fact, at the end of the Riley case, that was my last one, I went up to the officers in the court and the stenographer and all of them, and I said, you have my sympathy. I said, you have to get up every morning and know you're coming to this very corrupt place.
Now, Hans,
they all put their head down.
In the last 30 seconds, if the Judge Riley, Judge Ilio, they're watching the show, what would you want to say to them? Because you didn't get a chance to speak as much as you wanted in court. So tell them what you would want to say if those two are looking at the show.
And I would say the same to my ex-wife. First of all, I forgive my wife. She's bipolar. And I forgave her right away. But I would say to them, repent, because you're gonna face the music. This is a colossal thing you've done. Not to me. You can keep the money or whatever. I'm only going to use it for what I told you. But do it for yourself and for the people of New York. I saw things in the courtroom where a woman was crying. She wanted her husband back, and she forgave him and wanted to remove the stay-away order. And the judge said no, and if he goes home, I'll arrest both of you. I said, well, don't you want people to reconcile? And that was his response to people. They are downright rude.
Okay, we got a little blooper on here, and that was the longest 30 seconds I've ever heard in my life. So I'm going to have to cut you off, Hans, because we're running out of time. I'm Gary Jacobs. Thank you for watching us on Long Island Backstory. Again, you can look at Hans' book if you want, find on Facebook. And for the people who are watching it on YouTube, please subscribe to Long Island Backstory. Click on that little check thing on the bottom. The more viewers we get, the better it is for us. Get the message out. See you next week.
Long Island Backstory is made possible in part by Americans for Legal Reform, the oldest, most successful legal group in the world. P.O. Box 2679, Huntington Station, New York 11746. Telephone 631-421-6390. Website Americans4legalreform.com.